The early afternoon sun blazed heavily against the adobe houses and vacant quadrangle. The air was still and oppressive, and seemed to be thickened by the fierce, withering rays of the Arizona Sunday. To the east, the purplish blur of the pinholes showed hazily through the glare. Travisin leaned loosely against a support post under the brush ramada. His grey cotton shirt was black with sweat in places, but he seemed unmindful of the heat. His sun-darkened face was impassive, as if asleep, but his eyes were only half closed in the shadow of his hat brim, squinting against the glare in the direction from which Fry would return. Earlier that morning, the scout and 6 of his coyoteros had traveled upriver to inspect the tracks selected by Pillo and his band. The hostiles had erected their wickiups without a murmur of complaint, and seemed to have fallen into the alien routines of reservation life without any trouble. But it was their silence, their impassive acceptance of this new life that bothered Travisin. For the 2 weeks the hostiles had been at Camp Gila, Travisin's scouts had been on the alert every minute of the day. But nothing had happened. When Fry returned, he would know more. De both appeared in the office door behind him. Not back yet. No. He might have stopped to chin with some of the White Mountain people. He's got a few friends there. Travisin said. Barney's got a little Apache blood in him, you know. De both was openly surprised. He has. I didn't know that. He thought of the countless times he had voiced his contempt for the Apaches in front of Fry. He felt uncomfortable, and a little embarrassed now, though Fry had never once seemed to take it as a personal affront. Travisin read the discomfort on his face. There was no sense in making it more difficult. His mother was a half-breed. Travisin explained. She married a miner, and followed him all over the territory while he dug holes in the ground. Barney was born somewhere up in the Tonto country on one of his dad's claims. When he was about 8 or 9, his ma and dad were killed by some Tontos, and he was carried off and brought up in the tribe. That's where he got his nose for scouting. It's not just in his blood like some people think. He learned it, and he learned it from the best in the business. Then, when he was about 15, he came back to the world of the whites. About that time there was a campaign operating out of Fort Apache against the Tontos. One day a patrol came across the rancheria where Barney lived, and took him back to Fort Apache. All the warriors were out, and only the women and children were around. He remembered enough about the white man's life to want to go back to the Indians, but he knew too much about the Apache's life for the army to let him go. So he's been a guide since that day. He was at Fort Thomas when I arrived there 7 years ago, and he's been with me ever since I've been here at Gila. De both was deep in thought. But can you trust him? He asked. After living with the Apaches for so long. Can you trust the rest of the scouts? Can you trust those rocks and mesquite clumps out yonder? Travisin looked hard into the lieutenant's eyes. Mister, you watch the rocks, the trees, the men around you. You watch until your eyes ache, and then you keep on watching. Because you'll always have that feeling that the minute you let down, you're done for. And if you don't have that feeling, you're in the wrong business. A little past 4, Fry and his scouts rode in. He threw off and ran toward the agency office. Travisin met him in the doorway. They scoot. Barney. Fry paused to catch his breath and wiped the sweat from his face with a grimy, brown hand. It might be worse than that. When we got there this morning only a few of Pillo's band were around. I questioned them, but they kept trying to change the subject and get us out of there. I thought they were acting strange, talking more than usual, and then it dawned on me. Gatito had spotted it right away. They'd been drinking, Tiswin. You know you got to drink a whopping lot of that stuff to really get drunk. I figure these boys ain't had much yet, 'cause they were still too quiet. But the others were probably off at the source of supply, so we rode out and tried to cut their sign. We tried every likely spot in the neighborhood until afternoon, and we still couldn't find a trace of them. Travisin considered the situation silently for a moment. They've probably been at it since they got here, taking their time to pick a spot we wouldn't find right away. No wonder they've been so quiet. Travisin had much to think about, for a drunken Apache will do strange things. Bloody things. He asked the scout, "What does Gatito think?" Fry hesitated, and then said, "I don't like the way he was licking his lips while we were on the hunt." Fry did not have to say more. Travisin knew him well enough to know that the scout felt Gatito could bear some extra attention. To the both, watching the scene, it was a new experience. The captain and the quarter-breed scout talking like brothers, saying more with eyes and gestures than with words. He looked from one to the other intently, then for the first time noticed the young Apache standing next to Travisin. A moment ago he had not been there, but there had not been a sound or a footstep. The young brave spoke swiftly in the Apache tongue for almost a minute, and then disappeared around the corner of the office. The both could still see vividly the red calico cloth around thick, black hair, and his almost feminine features. Fry and Travisin began to talk again, but they both interrupted. "What in the name of heaven was that?" Travisin grinned at the young officer's astonishment. "I thought you knew Peaches." Forgot he hadn't been around for a while. "Peaches," Travisin said. "Let's go inside." They gathered around his table, lighted cigarettes, and Travisin went on. "I'd just as soon you didn't speak his name aloud around here. You see, that young, gentle-looking Apache has one of the toughest jobs on the reservation. He's an agency spy. Only Fry and I, and now you, know what he is. Not even any of the scouts know. The Indians suspect that someone on their side is reporting to me, but they have no idea who it is. He's got a dangerous job, but it's necessary. If trouble ever breaks out, we have to be able to nip it in the bud. Peaches is the only way for us to determine where the bud is." "May I ask what he told you just now?" Travisin drew hard on his cigarette before replying. "He said that he knew much, but he would be back sometime before sunup tomorrow to tell what he knew. He made one last point very emphatic. He said, 'Watch Gatito.'" A rear room of the agency office adobe served as sleeping quarters for both of the officers. Their cots were against opposite walls, lockers at the feet, and two large pine-board wardrobes, holding uniforms and personal gear, were flush with the wall running along the heads of their bunks. A full moon pointed its light through the window frame over the both's bed, carpeted the plank flooring with a delicate sheen, reached as far as the gleaming upper portion of Travisin's body, motionless on the cot. One arm was beneath the grey blanket that reached just above his waist, the other was folded across his bare chest. A floorboard creaked somewhere near. His eyes opened at once, and closed just as suddenly. Beneath the blanket his hand groped near his thigh, and quietly covered the grip of his pistol. He opened his eyes slightly, and glanced across the room. The both was dead asleep. The latch on the door leading to the front office rattled faintly, and then hinges creaked as the door began to open. Travisin quietly drew his arm from beneath the blanket, and leveled the pistol at the doorway. His thumb closed on the hammer, and drew it back, and the click of the cocking action was a sharp, metallic sound. The opening door motion stopped. "Nantan, do not shoot." The words were just above a whisper. Travisin threw the blanket from his legs, swung them to the floor, and moved to the doorway without a sound, Peaches backed into the office as he approached. Chiricahua leave. How long? They go maybe 5 miles now. Gatito go with them. Travisin stepped back to the doorway and slammed the butt of his pistol against the wooden door. Hey, mister, roll out. They both sat bolt upright. Be ready to ride in a few minutes, Travisin said, and ran out of the office toward Barney Fry's adobe across the quadrangle. In less than 20 minutes, 13 riders streaked out of the quadrangle westward. Behind them, orange light was just beginning to show above the irregular outline of the pinholes. The morning was cool, but still, and the stillness held the promise of the blistering heat of the day to come. The sun was only a little higher when Travisin and his scouts rode up to 4 wiki-ups along the bank of the Gila. Travisin halted the detail, but did not dismount. He sat motionless in the saddle, his senses alert to the quiet. He said something in Apache, and one of the scouts threw off, and cautiously entered the first wiki-up. He reappeared in an instant, shaking his head from side to side. In the third hut, the scout remained longer than usual. When he reappeared, he was dragging an unconscious Indian by the legs. Travisin said, "That one of them, Barney." Fry swung down from his pony and leaned over the prostrate Indian, saying a few words in Apache to the scout still holding the Indian's legs. "He's a Chiricahua, Captain. Dead drunk. Must have been drinking for at least 2 days." He nodded his head toward the Apache scout. "Ningan says there's a jug inside with a little tiswin in it." Travisin pointed to 2 of the scouts, and then swept his arm in the direction of the 4th wiki-up. They kicked their ponies to a leaping start, dashed to the hut, and gave it a quick inspection. In a minute they were back. The scouts watched Travisin intently as he studied the situation. They knew what the signs meant. They sat their ponies now with restless anticipation, fingering their carbines, checking ammunition belts, holding in the small, wiry horses that also seemed to be charged with the excitement of the moment, for there is no love lost between the Coyotero and the Chiricahua. Eric Travisin knew as well as any of them what the sign meant. 16 drunken Apaches screaming through the countryside with blood in their eyes and a bad taste in their mouths. It was something that had to be stopped before the Indians regained their senses. Now they were loco Apaches, bloodthirsty, but a bit careless. By the next day, unless stopped, they would again be cold, patient guerrilla fighters led by the master strategist, Pillo. From the direction of the agency, a scout rode into sight, beating his pony to a whirlwind pace. He reined in abruptly and shouted something to Fry through the dust cloud. "We been sleeping, Captain." He says Gatito made off with a dozen carbines and 200 rounds of 44s. Must have sneaked them out sometime last night. In Travisin, the excitement of what lay ahead was building up continually. Now it was beginning to break through his calm surface. "We're awake now, Barney. I figure they'll either streak south for the Madras right away, or contact their people up near Apache by dodging through the basin, and then heading east for the reservation. I know if I was going to hide out for a while, I'd sure want my wife along. Let's find out which it is,